What's up everyone? My name's Ryan Pfeiffer and you're watching Shape and Explore. Today we're going to be making this DIY cast concrete bench featuring built-in planters and Japanese inspired joinery. Let's get started. We started off by ripping down a 5/8 inch sheet of melamine. This would help to form the base and walls of our molds. With everything ripped down to width, we then went to the chop saw and cut everything down to length. This project is pretty scalable, but I'll list out dimensions as we go along. Next, we started assembling the molds for the legs. It was easiest to use a hot glue gun and have an extra set of hands to help keep everything at 90 degrees. These molds are 1 foot 2 inches wide, 8 inches long, 4 inches high, and have a 3 inch by 3 inch indentation at the top. Also, be sure to make 2 of these molds. Next, we started assembling the mold for the bench top. This was 3 foot 1 inches long, 1 foot 2 inches wide, and 5 inches tall. After that, we started assembling the molds for the 2 planter boxes. These would be 11 inches long, 6 inches wide, and 3 inches high. The 2 planter box molds will be submerged in concrete, so I used metallic tape to seal off all of the exposed edges. This will help to prevent any swelling or warping within the casting process. Then I assembled the mold for the cross support piece. This would be 2 foot 10 inches long, 3 inches wide, and 3 inches high. Next, I went back to the leg molds and sealed the exposed seams with more metallic tape. Then I used some thin insulation foam to add a bit of thickness to the indentation of the joints. I made sure to seal everything very tightly with packing tape as well. Then I used some duct tape to reinforce the corners, just to make sure they wouldn't split during the casting process. After that, I went back to the benchtop mold and added in the planter boxes. I used scrap 2x4s as spacers, then hot glued the molds in place. With all of the molds assembled, I used some waterproof caulk to seal them off. Then I came back with a little scraper to finish off the seams. Once the caulk had dried, I went outside and mixed up some concrete, trying to get it to an oatmeal-like consistency. Then I started filling up the molds, being sure to get the concrete into all the little nooks and crannies. When they were full, I used a stick to agitate any air bubbles out. You can also vibrate the sides of the mold to do this. I then repeated this process for the cross support piece, making sure to add a piece of rebar in the middle to help deal with any tensile forces. I then poured the mold for the bench top, but forgot to record it. After letting the concrete cure for 3 days, I removed everything from the molds. The legs and cross pieces were no problem, but the planter boxes were a different story. Using melamine to cast the planter boxes proved to be a pretty bad idea. It took pretty much every hand tool I owned to get the melamine out of the concrete. To add insult to injury, one of the planter boxes developed a large crack and ended up snapping completely off. This was definitely a setback, but I tried to just roll with the punches and recast the bench top. This time, I wasn't taking any chances. I reinforced the mold with screws and used pink foam insulation to create the planter boxes. I then screwed in from the bottom of the mold to hold the foam pieces in place. Next up, I cut a lot of rebar. I realized that the bench top failed at its thinnest point, so I made sure to reinforce all of these areas when I recast the bench top. After waiting another 3 days, it was time to remove the formwork. The new bench top seemed to be much stronger with all of the rebar, and the pink foam insulation was quite easy to remove. I plan on eventually using this bench outdoors, so I used a masonry bit and drilled some holes for drainage. Then I used a foam roller to seal the concrete with 3 coats of all-purpose sealer. After that, I used some adhesive furniture pads to make sure I didn't scratch up the floor when setting up the bench. I wanted to keep the bench design pretty simple and versatile. It's a one-seater bench that allows the user to reconnect with nature. I feel like it can work well in both interior and exterior environments. The bench top is extremely heavy, so I got some help lifting it and took my time just to be safe. Then I tested out the bench, and it seems plenty strong. After that, I filled the planters. I'm no gardening expert, but I chose some ferns to help emphasize the low, horizontal axis of the bench. After all the ferns were planted, the bench was done. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. As a first attempt at a concrete piece of this scale, I'm pretty happy with the way things turned out. As you can see, there's some air bubbles that form during the curing process, but they actually make a pretty consistent pattern, and I like the way they help to break up the large, stark lines of the piece. So that's a bit of a happy accident. Also, I learned that you can never have enough rebar, so if you're making slabs of this scale, make sure you add rebar and don't let them crack on you. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up below, and feel free to leave any questions or comments there as well. If you're new to my channel, I'd like to say welcome, and also consider subscribing. That way you can stay up to date on all my newest builds, like these. Follow the links on screen for more projects. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time on Shape and Explore.